So I'm gonna ramble at you for a second because I am studying 2nd Peter, which I have never read. Probably, but never purposefully, consciously. And so we got to this part where Peter is talking about faith, and he kind of gives these traits in ascending order on how to do that. So it's 2 Peter 1 verse 5 through 7. For this very reason, make every effort to supplement your faith with virtue, and virtue with knowledge, and knowledge with self-control, and self-control with steadfastness, and steadfastness with godliness, and godliness with brotherly affection, and brotherly affection with love. Okay, so then my study gave me, I'll show y'all real quick, a cool box to write the qualities and then the definitions. So I don't have a Bible dictionary. I'll probably do in the back of one of my study Bibles, but I used Google. But some words have different meanings biblically than your Oxford, whatever. Some no. So for virtue, it was behavior showing high moral standards. Which I think overall, in my age group, I'm 35. I think that virtue, if you call somebody virtuous, there's kind of a negative connotation to that they're I don't know, stuffy, no fun, whatever. The next word is knowledge. The true justified belief having a certain understanding. I went with the definition that made the most sense in the context. Self-control, the ability to control desires and emotions, expression of one's behavior. Which is another word, having self-control isn't necessarily doesn't really have a positive feelings around it, right? Our society, if somebody is highly self-controlled, virtuous, steadfast, those are not necessarily seen as traits to run after in our society, which makes sense, right? That the things that we're striving for are not the things that society values. Kind of the whole point. Steadfastness, the quality of being firm and unwavering. Godliness, the quality of being devoutly religious. That was the dictionary meaning, and I didn't super like it, so I looked it up in a biblical dictionary. Conforming to the laws and wishes of God. Liked that a lot better. Because again, devoutly religious has kind of a negative connotation if you use it outside of a church setting. Which, by the way, is where I live, outside of a church setting. Brotherly affection. Did not have a dictionary meaning for this. Looked it up in a biblical dictionary. Natural family affection extended to other believers and community. And then love, the intense feeling of deep connection. So, it asked us to consider the order in which Peter listed the qualities, how they relate to one another, and what the importance of him doing that was. And that super stuck out to me today, because when you're looking, starting in verse 5, virtue and knowledge and self-control. So virtue and knowledge are within yourself, and mostly that's about your behavior and your understanding, right? Things you have to do. And then when you get to self-control and steadfastness, also things you have to do, but impact people around you greatly. If you don't have self-control, people think you can fly off the handle every second. It's going to impact your interpersonal relationships. Steadfastness, the ability of being firm and unwavering. If you're kind of a pushover, if you don't follow through, if you're not dependable, like, those are the words that we use now. But like, steadfastness is a better word that's kind of fallen out of use. And so those are things that are more interpersonal between you and like a few people around you, your close relationships. Godliness, conforming to the laws and wishes of God. Brotherly affection, extending that natural closeness and family affection to anyone who believes. And love, the intense feeling of deep affection. Those are more like greater than just those right directly around you, right? Like more community, how you interact with everyone that's around you. So I wrote, starting with your inner self, extending out to interpersonal traits, and then ending up at a community level. Now, if you read that list and you see virtue and self-control and steadfastness, and you're just like, like, those don't sound fun. Those don't sound attractive. Those are not like flashy and good looking. However, love, brotherly affection and love, those are flashy. Those are cool. Let's just jump to those, right? So like, that means that I have not taken the time to manifest the other 4 or 5, I would say 4, in myself and in my small relationships, like really intimate relationships. Yet now I am trying to portray myself as having a quality of godliness, which is conforming to the laws and wishes of God, brotherly affection, and love. And those are all things that look really good in a church community, like in front of people, right? Those are the things that people expect to see at church. But if you're doing those 3 things without doing the virtue, the knowledge, the self-control, and steadfastness, if you have not mastered, like, self-control, for instance, if you're doing the love without the self-control, which is the ability to control desires, emotions, expressions of one behavior, that's where you get people in leadership positions that make mistakes, because we are human. And so if you don't have a good handle on self-control and you're not asking God to support you in having self-control, that's when you get people that like are in higher leadership situations that are like having affairs, and then it blows up and it's a huge scandal, for example. I mean, we should all be doing this individually, but when these traits are not focused on in a really, like, in a position where people are watching you, right? Like, because like very few people watch me. Like, I have a group of like 6 kids I work with. I try my best to be a good example and like whatever to them, and then I have my own kids. But like, I don't have thousands of people that like pay attention to me. Thank goodness. Because I do not have a handle on these yet. But it just made sense to me that if you don't cultivate the ones that don't sound fun, right? That some people view those words as weighted negatively, especially in our society, because we like to talk about like love and being Jesus with skin on and like all of these like churchy phrases, right? Which I hate, and try really desperately not to use. But unfortunately, sometimes like there's no way around using them, and it just drives me batty. I try really hard because like as soon as like people who aren't in church communities hear those things, like they're like, no longer listening. She's a church lady, which is like overall fine, but I like people to hear me. So it just really was glaring when I was reading this, which to be fair is the first time I've been reading this. I don't watch a lot of sermons. I don't, whatever. So like maybe everybody's like, yeah, my preacher taught about that last week. Welcome to the party. Possibly. But I had just seen it laid out so purposefully by Peter in this book that I have not read, that embracing these things and openly cultivating them instead of shying away so much from the ones that could be seen as weighted negatively in our society and just jumping to love is dangerous. Because like preaching love, yes, love is like, God is love, yes. But if you preach having this brotherly affection, which is not erotic affection, right? This is not like a sexual relationship. It's not a romantic relationship. This is a brotherly affection to other believers. Like if you are teaching that and expecting people to do that and manifest that and like shepherd people and like have small groups, but you have not taught them virtue, having high moral standards, and self-control, and steadfastness, which is firm and unwavering to that self-control and virtue, you are asking for problems. Like the order of these, I feel, is very important. And I have never heard this talked about. Like you start with faith, you add behavior showing high moral standards. You get really good at that. You're adding knowledge in at that point. True belief, certain understanding, which is like, I am sure. And then adding like your self-control and your steadfastness and asking God to support you in those areas. Then godliness like is an outward trait that people then will see, conforming to the laws and wishes of God, which you are able to do, because you can't conform to the laws and wishes of God. Like obviously everybody will make mistakes, but you cannot do that without the knowledge of them or have cultivated self-control. So like the ability to like suppress your desires and like attitudes and whatever. We all have them, but like you don't spew them on other people. So if you haven't cultivated those things, then like the godliness will be wonky and you're gonna run into problems trying to do the whole brotherly affection and love part at a community level if you don't have those first 4 down. And like, I was raised in church. I went through church splits. I went through church scandals. I went through like people in positions of power being predatory, like youth group madness, and those things. Raised in church, grew up in church, was in church, like kept me away for a long time. But I think that looking at those qualities that should complete and enhance faith, as Peter talks about, are huge. And I've read a lot of the Bible, and I have read all of it, but like, sometimes when you like haven't had your second cup of coffee and you like read a few paragraphs and you're like, what did I read? And you just keep going. So like, this is the first time that I've like read this section, and it just jumped out at me. Like, why have I not heard about this? Why? Like, this is like the best recipe to look at. And like, let's say I feel like I'm struggling with godliness, which like I don't feel like anybody could say to another person with a straight face, because they'd be like, what? Like, of course not, you are a sinner. Like, so I feel like even in church circles you couldn't say I'm struggling with godliness, but whatever. So, but like, if you're struggling to conforming to the laws and wishes of God, go backwards. How are you doing with steadfastness? The idea of being firm and unwavering. We good on that? Okay. So how are you doing with self-control? Because if you are not able to control your desires, emotions, or expression of your behavior, then godliness is going to be a real far reach. Like, I just think that we should talk about this verse more. And like, maybe when people are first coming to church and like first trying to understand what like belief and faith are, and then like what to do like after you believe and dedicate your life to Jesus, like what next? Like what are those next steps? Do I just join a small group and like wing it? Like, I feel like this verse, this chunk of verses, 1 Peter 1:5-7, is huge. Like, if I had been taught this, like, this would have made so much sense to me. Granted, I'm real logical. I'm on the autism spectrum, so, like, maybe other people are like, no. But for me, I feel like this was super helpful. I don't know, just, like, hit me like a ton of bricks. So I thought I would tell you all about it. I've never recorded one of these videos. I don't know. There you go. My morning before coffee thoughts from Angela. Have a good day.